Why do retired sports heroes die young? Last week, I saw an old daily sketch newspaper cutting with the portraits of football players, the starting lineups of the two finalists at the 1975 FA Cup final in Lagos. Rangers International of Enugu, Shooting Stars International of Ibadan. The pictures brought back memories of a day that will go down in my story as one of the great dramas that is etched forever in the minds of supporters of Shooting Stars Football Club that were involved. They had to wait for me on the corridor of the classroom to complete my last examination paper that morning before breaking all speeding rules to drive me to Lagos in their branded Coaster bus to join the rest of my team. This was on the day of the final match of the FA Cup. I leave that story for later. Our portraits in the newspaper, now posted on a social media platform or platforms, reveals a painful part of an ugly situation that stares Nigerians in the face today, the plight of many retired sports heroes. There are 22 portraits of the players in that old newspaper cutting. I go through the faces with their names below them. It is a painful realization that of the 11 players of Shooting Stars FC listed, only 2 are still alive today. I am thinking, this is so, not because I have earned it, but by the grace of the creator of the universe. That means I'm one of the 2. Of the 11 members of the Rangers Football Club team that were shown, only 4 are still alive, I believe, today. It takes a little while for all this to sink in as I stare in shock at the newspaper. Most of the national football heroes of 1975 were all very young then. Many of them died when they were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. There may be only 1 or 2 that died in their 60s. It is a shocking revelation. But why is this so? Only 2 weeks ago, Moses Effiong, a member of the 1980 Africa Cup of Nations, was added to the statistics. He was only 65. Last week, a member of the 1984 and 1990 Africa Cup of Nations teams, Ayo Ogunlana, also passed on. He was 67 years old. Why is it that so many young retired footballers die young? Does this extend to other sports too? I don't have the answers. Is there a connection between retirement from sports and dying at a young age? Are these premature deaths connected to the mental state of the athletes as a result of the hardship of living after retirement? There's plenty of evidence all around us to examine, pointing to the present lives of retired sports heroes. We need an urgent scientific medical inquest of some sort. That's why the National Sports Commission must react to the remarks last week of the former president of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, on the matter of retired sports heroes. During the turning of the sword of a new sports complex in Bayelsa State, he described the condition of most retired sports heroes as beggarly and called for the establishment of a special fund scheme to take care of their welfare for the rest of their lives. The conversion from a life where every need is met to a life where they have to fend for themselves is a very difficult transition to make successfully for retired sports heroes. They wake up one morning without a proper plan for life in retirement and suddenly find that the transition between being rich and being poor is a very thin line indeed. Unfortunately, experience has now revealed that even academic qualifications are practically not enough. The world of sports is littered with educated as well as less educated failed heroes. Both seem to die young. That's the cocoa of the matter. It is worthy of a national inquest. Part 2 of my editorial is titled, "This is just a story of the 1975 FA Cup final that I referred to earlier." In 1975, I was a final year HND student at the Polytechnic, Ibadan. The final of that year's Challenge Cup coincided with a test that I had that fateful day in November. Even as a student, I was a key member of the Shooting Stars FC team with responsibility to score the goals, the team's goals. Members of the supporters club volunteered to wait for me to complete my examination and to drive me in their bus to Lagos in time for the match. The trip to Lagos took 3 hours on that old Lagos route. We arrived Ikorodu Road, 3 hours to spare to the start of the match, and then ran into this horrendous traffic. The construction work on the dualization of that main artery into Lagos was ongoing. 1 hour to kick off, we were crawling into Western Avenue, some 2 or so kilometers to the National Stadium, Surulere. The supporters decided we should get down from the bus and walk the rest of the way to the stadium. My football boots were in a bag I slung around my neck as we trekked and sweated in the blistering humidity of Lagos just before the Harmattan season started. We eventually got to the overcrowded stadium and only managed to enter through the team's entrance after fighting with security personnel about my identity. Remember, this was in 1975. I was very young. How could a member of the team that was going to play that match still be outside the stadium when the teams were about to file out? That was the big question. Finally, we entered the stadium just as the teams were actually filing out from their changing rooms. My teammates saw me waiting there by the tunnel. Of course, it was too late for me to join the party as they climbed up the stairs that led the players to the Theater of Dreams. That's the main bowl of the National Stadium. The team list without my name had been submitted. Alan Hunt, the British coach of Shooting Stars, did not have any information about my whereabouts when I was coming from Ibadan. So he left out my name and told the officials that he would still win the match even without me. Remember, those were not the days of mobile phone. You didn't have mobile phone to call anybody. So I stood to one side in the tunnel and I watched my colleagues walk onto the field for another epic encounter between the two biggest clubs in Nigeria at the time. I ended up sitting on the team's bench, ruining every minute of a match I could have played and made history as my first FA Cup final. It didn't happen. So I watched painfully as Rangers Ogidi Ibiabuchi raised down the flank to score the lone goal that separated the teams in that encounter. Shooting Stars supporters still believe that my absence on that day from the team made all the difference. That's why Shooting Stars lost. But we will never know. Will we? Well, that's my editorial for today. That story was just to entertain you, to take away the stress of listening to the plight of retired sports heroes in Nigeria.